Welcome to Every Night is Game Night, because we all love game nights with our family and friends. But when you play solo games, then every night can be a game night. Check us out along with other great podcasts at dicetowernetwork.com.
Every Night is Game Night, episode 110, Kickstarter Roundup with Rescue Polar Bears, Holding On, The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr, Champions of Hara, and Archmage. Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome back to the Every Night is Game Night podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Thank you so much for joining us. Last week, you heard from Liz and Jeremy. They are back. Welcome back, lady and gentleman.
It is so good to be back.
Thank you for having me back, man. Hello, party people. How y'all doing?
What's up, party people?
Yeah. Yes,
we're having a good time over here. We just finished recording our last episode. Last episode had some games that we liked. So some games that we liked, they aren't going to be like the gemstones of your collections, but there are some people out there that really wanted to know about some of the stuff we talked about. So we have the goods for you. This episode, we have some games lined up that we are really, really jazzed about. So we can't wait to get to that. But before we get to that, we don't have Liz and Jeremy on here very often, so I'm going to give them a platform to do a little bit of promo. Jeremy, tell us about your latest adventures in Board Game Revolution community and Facebook.
All right. So if you don't know, my name is Jeremy, but I go by the name of Jambalaya Plays Games. That's my blog at JambalayaPlaysGames.com. But the majority of my content can be found on Board Game Revolution Facebook group, where I do a lot of interaction across all Facebook areas, but I run a live show. It's called BGR Live. It's on every other Friday, but right now, gearing up for Essen and all these Kickstarters, it's pretty much every Friday right now. Live plays, lots of games that are on the market. I usually do about 4 or 5, and I show you basic walkthroughs of each of the games. They could be solo modes. They could be Kickstarter previews. They could be, games that are out for retail. Pretty much anything they send me, I show, and I sweat it out and talk about games for about an hour and a half. So, please join us. Please join the Board Game Revolution Facebook group. We have giveaways and things like that. Great community, and I'm glad to represent it.
And Liz is at BeyondSolitaire.net and Token Punch Lunch.
I am. So yeah, just because I play solo games does not mean that I don't want to talk about them with other people. So come and give me a visit at BeyondSolitaire.net, which is my review site. It's also got a bunch of links to other solo sites. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole that is solo gaming online, I can help you get started. And I do have my own YouTube channel as Beyond Solitaire, where I do how to solo games and show off videos and show off, the solo modes of various games. And yes, I do have a spot on Token Punch Lunch with the Dice Tower.
Okay.
Well, I have a spot on crowd surfing.
Ooh.
Yes.
Ooh. No,
I have a podcast.
She's solid. She's solid. She's getting grained in there. I'm just a newbie.
Awesome. All right. So it's funny because usually we reserve the Kickstarter segment with whatever project Liz finds over the week. But the timing of this episode, we're recording this at a time a little bit ahead, but we know there is a gargantuan monster of a Kickstarter that is landing right around the time, maybe a little bit before that this episode launches. These guys were talking about it right before we hit the show. Very, very excited about it. It is Cloudspire from Chip Theory Games. You guys want to geek out about that a little bit?
Yes, right, well, I'm actually voluntarily working the SAT in a couple weeks to make the money to buy this Kickstarter.
You are subjecting yourself to 5 hours of boredom in front of bored kids, or stressed out kids. You're bored.
Yes, I'm not supposed to drink water, eat food, read a book, anything for like 5 hours.
Oh, I play with my phone. Who cares?
Yep. So
Administration.
So for me to get a Chip Theory game, I will straight up purge at least 10 games to make sure I can go all in for. That's pretty much how I am about Chip Theory stuff. It's either all in or all out. And I saw the art that they already have done. It looks like a notch, like a notch above where they were before with this Undertow and Too Many Bones series. Every game they make is better than the next one. It's like they're just on a spike. And ever since I've had Hoplomachus, you would think that they just kind of quit on that. The games got better. Now they have Too Many Bones, Undertow takes that to another level, and they keep, supporting that. They're going to keep supporting that stuff, and now they're going to this Cloudspire. It's just next level. They're just a next level publisher that used to just be a small indie, and now they're just gargantuan, and it's all deserving. Great customer service, good people, always part of the community. They think about solo games. They actually think solo game first and kind of expand from there. I just, as we become content creators, I support people just as much as I support the games, and it just so happens that they happen to be good people and they make great games. So, always in for the chip theory, man. Always in for it.
You can go check out Cloudspire right now. It is live on Kickstarter, or should be by the time the episode drops. It is a massive tower defense game, cooperative modes, and all sorts of other goodies going on. The chips are there, and I'm sure it's going to be pretty pricey. But like with Too Many Bones, if you're into it, then it is worth the price. So go ahead and check that one out. But now we have a couple of Kickstarters that we're jazzed about, recently delivered, fresh and hot from we always love getting those shipping notifications. It's like a little early Christmas. It's like, ooh. That's like the best part. That's like an underrated part of Kickstarter is like getting that shipping notification. It's like, oh, I back this? Yes,
so Jason, so this is the best part for me. I actually have like a nice, it's kind of like I have a nice view. So I live on the end of a court. So I come around the corner to my house. So it's like when I'm coming around the corner, I'm looking and I can see my porch. I'm like, oh, was there a box there? Like it's such a childish thing. Like
you get that hint of brown, you start jogging.
I feel like I want to I feel like somehow I magically want to jump out of my car and run to my porch, or I want to stick my head out the window. Both which I don't do. I only do them in my head. But I'm that excited sometimes when I want to go home. It's like, what's in my porch?
So my favorite part is checking off the little checkbox on your back pledges list on Kickstarter to signify that it's been delivered. I just like looking at all those green checks, and I get very irritated when there's like a little interruption in the line because somebody's late.
Have I checked that? I don't think I've checked those. I gotta go into that. I haven't seen that function. Anyway, I have enough back projects, so don't worry about me. All right, so we're going to share some. I'm going to go first. This is probably the lightest game we're going to talk about, but it is definitely, spoiler alert, I am just gaga over this game. So this is Rescue Polar Bears. This was designed by John Kung and Huang Yi Ming, published in English by Mayday Games. It is a originally Chinese design. They had an initial Kickstarter. They released just this base game, and then they released this kind of revamped version called Data and Temperature. So the game I'm going to talk about is this kind of revamped version that came over to the States. So this is a kind of fully cooperative game. So the setting of it is it's in the polar ice caps and they're melting. So chunks of ice are falling into the sea at a rapid pace due to rapid climate change. The poor polar bears they're on ice caps and they have nowhere to go, so they're losing their habitat. So as a scientist, you have two jobs. One, you got to rescue the polar bears. They're dumping into the sea and they could swim, but they can't swim for that long. So you got to get them before the polar ice caps totally melt. The other thing you have to do in terms of like that short term, long term, we talk about a lot with cooperative games. The long term is that you have to go around and collect these little data points. So, you're trying to gather evidence to kind of prove to the world that, yes, climate change is real. You have to get some activity going on. It's really funny because, yes, that is a pretty hot political topic. Oh, is climate change real or not? It just says so in the book. It's like climate change is real, people. and you guys have to prove to this stupid governments that to do something about it. So they don't say it that strongly, but this game definitely has a perspective. So it's not in your face or anything like that. It's a game about melting ice caps. So I thought that was pretty cool that they kind of took a stand there. For something that they believed in. Okay, so this is a board with a hex map and some ice tiles. So. And on every single hex tile, at least the beginning of the game, are some polar bears. So the polar bears are the most adorable, cutest thing. Oh my god! If you guys follow me on Twitter,
they are so cute.
They're so cute. If you guys follow me on Twitter, ENGN_podcast, or I've linked it in Solo Group, Board Game Revolution Group, different places. They're just like these little meeples, and they're white, and they have these cute faces on them. And there's a mama. And there's a papa, and there's a little baby. So there's 3 different sizes. So on some of them, you're actually going to have a little family of polar bears. And it's so cute.
Does this mean that if you mess up, the adorable baby polar bear dies and you have to live with that on your conscience?
Okay, so very important. Okay, I'm glad you pointed. I'm glad you nailed that one. Okay, so how the game flows is the ice caps are going to melt and you're going to lose bears. So like this is like the in between game. Think Flashpoint Fire Rescue. Like that's kind of the closest analog I felt to this game. There's not a lot of card play. You don't have like a hand to manage or anything. You just kind of have yourself and your powers, and you're basically a scientist on a ship, right? And the ship is going to be going all on the little hexes and doing stuff. So between the turns, there's kind of these two phases. So the first phase is the polar bear kind of reproduction phase or like growth phase.
There's polar bear family growth.
There is polar bear family growth. Yes, you're going to roll a die, and if there's only a baby there, or the baby's going to grow. But if there's a mama and a papa there, they're going to shoot out 2 baby bears. And I'm talking shoot. So like, because if the baby bear doesn't, because they don't both fit on the hex. There's only 3 bears to a thing. So they're just going to show up on an adjacent hex. So like, okay, it's like, wow, that baby went pretty far. And if they're like, and you'll get into the situation where it's like they're all alone on their own hex and they're surrounded by water. So those bears are literally getting like popping out right into the water. And you have to save them. So to your point, Liz, the way you do not like, you're not going to have like a mass murder of bears. What happens is you have these helicopter tokens. So every time a bear would land into the ocean or like they don't fit on a tile, you lose a helicopter token. So the helicopter's like, yoink, I'm going to take you to the safety of my lab or whatever. So you're not going to kill. There's not the mass murder polar bears. You really do like have resources to save them. So that's
but then you get to put one in your helicopter and then you have a pet polar bear.
No, they're going to your lab, son.
No.
That polar bear's gone. It's a family weight game. There's no pets in this game. Anyway, so that's what. Yes,
just to go on a side note with the cuteness of polar bears, I think it's so funny. Like, you know how like polar bears are just one of the most deadliest animals ever. And yet we really, really like the Coke rescue bears, polar bears, and now this is just like, it's so funny because they are so cute. But like polar bears in real life are not cute, like at all. They're so dangerous, and it's so funny how that's a thing that we sell to each other. But this game
relative
sounds really
to climate change, it's not going to threaten climate change. So you have to have some empathy over here. Anyway, speaking of that, warming, the warming ice caps and the climate change. So the second phase of the kind of enemy or like the board turn is to melt some ice. So you're going to roll another die, you're going to raise the temperature, and if the temperature is at a certain spot, one of the ice cap is going to melt. So that's kind of how the game regulates, ice caps melting. And there's a way to like, the temperature will go up and down depending on what's happening on the board. If the temperature gets too hot, you're going to lose. If a bear goes into the river and you can't save him with a helicopter, you also lose. So there's a couple ways to lose the game. So the game will just end. So it's like, it won't even like go through the whole thing of, you lost the bear and I have to keep on going. No. That's like, okay, just like put away. Nothing to see here. Try again. So like what you're doing is like, so that's kind of the bad guy turn. The good guy turn is like actually really super simple because all you're doing is kind of moving and you have like these different ships, and they move at different speeds and they can do different things. So like you have the cargo ship that can load multiple bears, and you have the speed ship which can go 4, so you can want to collect a lot of data with it. So they have like special little powers. As you collect more data, the ships get more powerful, so you get to like open up another hold for another bear, and you get to go even faster, whatever it is. But that part is like really simple. It's simple to move, but like you're gonna see a lot of threads in BGG going like wow, this game is really hard. Like it's really hard because there's a geometry to saving the bears. Like you can't just save any old bear. Like you have to read the board. You have to read which ice tiles are going to melt because you get like a warning for one of the tiles, and you have to like anticipate which tiles are going to get isolated. Because if you get a certain tile isolated and it's full of bears and your ships are nowhere near, then they're going to reproduce and you're going to waste all your helicopter tokens and you're going to lose. So you have to really pay attention. Like you can't just like save bears mindlessly, can't just like do moves mindlessly. I call it like the geometry of saving bears. Like you have to really analyze what's going to happen on the board. I found that to be really cool, and that's where the depth of the game is. Like that's what you're here for. You're here for cuteness and you're here for depth. This game has both, and I'm over the moon. I played it, and then I was like, I got to play this again, and I just played it again and again and again. It is fast becoming a staple of my collection. I'm a big fan of Flashpoint. I think Flashpoint is better because it has more expansions. Give this one like different modes, different expansions that might rise up. I don't know if it's going to get it because I think it's limited distribution, but so it's not going to reach Flashpoint. But oh my god, I love it! I love it.
I want to get my hands on it before it hits. Yeah, it's not going to have a big run.
It's not. I once I saw it wasn't going to be a limited run, I just backed it right away. Lizzie, are you feeling pretty good about the prospect of that not a lot of bears die? And
yes, bears are cute. I don't care if they're murderous. It's okay.
I know.
After watching Blue Planet, it just changed my whole cuteness of polar bears around for me. It's such I'm sorry I had to go dark with the polar bear thing, but oh man, I've totally spent around on the cuteness of a polar bear.
The game is really cute. I can highly recommend this. It is, I mean, there's some difficulty with it. It's very lucky. You get dice. It's as lucky as Flashpoint, so people get very frustrated about like the randomness of the fire, and like just because it's realistic doesn't mean it's fun. There's some people that are going to argue that. I don't care. I mean, you can see enough of what's going to happen ahead of time. It's not that devastating if you really plan it out. If you really kind of say, okay, if I lose this chunk of ice, I'm going to die. You can plan that ahead of time and like rescue bears from there, as opposed to kind of where quote unquote obvious going to be. So there's that long term planning aspect to it. So I'm not really like feeling the luck criticism because I think you can strategize around it. So good, so cute. Go get it right now if you can. That is Rescue Polar Bears. Okay, so now we alluded to this in the last episode. We're gonna set up Liz. And Liz is going to talk about a game that we were really excited about. It is from our friend Rory O'Connor from Hub Games. He's been on the show before. So have Adam and Josh Carlson, by the way. We had a lot of friends to ENGN, so this is pretty cool. Yeah. From Hub Games, we are going to talk about Holding On, The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr.
All right, so Holding On is one of the most conceptually interesting games of the year, I would say. It is a game in which you and other people, if you want to play with other people, are a nursing staff, and you are in this hospital ward where a man named Billy Kerr has arrived, and he is definitely going to die at some point. His condition is terminal, but he's hanging on for dear life because he has regrets in his life that he really needs to get out to someone before he goes. And so your job as a nurse is to kind of split your time between offering him the medical care that you need to keep him alive and doing the palliative care that you need to do in order to get him to trust you and open up to you. And those are the actions that allow you to collect his memories. And the game is divided into 10 different scenarios. So overall, you get this overarching story. And yeah, I mean, the gameplay itself, mechanically, the game is very much about balance. You are trying to keep Billy alive. You're trying to fill all the staffing spots on the cards as things come up in his care. You have to make choices about who to overstress, whether to get somebody to the point where they have to go on leave because they've just worked too many double shifts. Do you want to use the care tokens, which are the currency of the game, to take care of Billy? To push for memories to clarify the partial ones that you've earned throughout the game. You have to make all these kind of difficult balancing choices as you go and get through the scenarios in order to get that next bit of flavor text and find out what happened.
So how many games of this have you finished, Liz?
I finished it.
Oh, you went through the whole thing?
I did.
In your group, or how'd you do that?
I played a couple scenarios with a friend, and then I played through the whole thing by myself.
Okay. And Jeremy, did you finish the whole thing?
I played through half of it.
You played through about half of it. Okay. So I've not. I've only played I played one game with Liz, the intro game via Skype. That is not the way to play this game. It's not. There is just too much going on in terms of like above the table interaction in terms of looking at the cards and everything. So I can say a little bit about the game, but I'm going to rely on the expertise of you guys in order to talk about it. So okay, simple worker placement game, very simple. Basically matching cards. Making the like Liz was saying, making these difficult decisions. What do you think? Where should we start? Actually, we'll start here. We'll start with, we want to love this game. We love Rory. We love the theme. We love the cojones of taking on this theme taking on a hospice care as a theme. That's really brave. So we're coming into this wanting to just gush and love on this game. So where are we at?
This was my most anticipated game this year, by far. I was really excited about this game, and I'm slightly disappointed in it. The first scenario, the introductory scenario, for me, I can get through that. I can deal with it because you're just trying to learn the memory system, like how to put these memories together. And that's a barrier of entry that could turn people off because it's a lot to get there when you're learning how to play the game, to get to 5 of those by the end of the game. And if you make it beyond that, which I hope people can, it does open up. But there's still a little bit of slowness to that, and you'll have to decide whether that's enough to make you excited about the game as you go along. Now, the one thing that does save that is that as you go along, the story cards, as you go through the setup and the text that's in between, plus as you start to see things like laid out, because you're kind of having hits and misses with this stuff, you're starting to chain these stories together because there's actually like little ticks that you kind of line up, and you can kind of see where certain things are starting to, the memories in his life are showing different parts of his age and things he went through at different parts of his life. And even as you get to the later games, you're just like, I'm trying to figure out what the story is. And they do a good job of that from module to module. But the thing is that the fun in between becomes a chase to get to these memories and not have a fun, overwhelming, fun experience every time. And the part of my issue is that what isn't lost is the fact that Rory and Michael can write a good story, and they know how to make stories. No question. I don't even have to play the rest of it to know that.
No, they do. I can agree that the story is good.
Right.
But I will say...
the other part is just, it's okay. It's not exciting,
Yeah, so what happened for me is that I really enjoyed the story, but I think that I enjoyed the story more in spite of what happened between story elements, as opposed to because of the gameplay that I was going through to get to that next snippet. I mean, it was almost like a video game where I was just grinding and hoping for that next cutscene.
Yep.
And I don't play those anymore. So and the thing is, it's not a bad game. There's nothing wrong with the mechanics exactly. It's just that they felt like a lot of work, and I understand that taking care of someone in a hospital is work, and that this game is meant to be an emotional experience and sort of grueling in some ways, but it was so there were times when I just really felt like, that first Jeremy, you're talking about replaying that first scenario. I tried it a couple times, screw it, I won, we're just moving on to the next one, because I was just not going to do that again. And I shouldn't feel that way about the first scenario in a game.
Exactly. And it's really just teaching the mechanic of okay, now I know how to clear memories. Okay, let's just move on to the next mission. Let's just move on, because that's really what it taught. And that could be a complete turnoff for somebody. And, I'm not that hard on that kind of stuff, but that can turn people off. A lot of people don't play games as much as people think they do. Once or twice, and they can be done with it. So yeah, I think what people are really you guys are both hammering it down on, just to kind of be really, really specific. So there's worker placement, and there's the managing of the stress and everything. But what the game comes down to, in order to progress, when you're playing the game, you're going to get these cards, and then at the end of the round, the partial memories, the fuzzy cards. And then at the end of the round, you kind of dive, push your luck style for cards that match, the clear memories. So you could just whiff on that, and that's luck. There is no skill whatsoever.
Yes.
You can, there's ways to kind of increase your odds, have more partial memories of the same type, dive a little bit deeper, save your resources for that. But that's not a skill. in a matching game like this, I would kind of hope that there will be more of a memory aspect where it's like, oh, I've earned this, and now I can die for this certain card because of this choice I made and because of this information I got. I'm trying to think of a game that does that, like a time story. So like if you have a certain bit of information, you can just kind of go straight to the thing that you need, and you earn that because you solved the puzzle or because you did a mechanical thing. Here, you're just increasing your odds of a random pull from the deck, and if you don't get that random pull, then you're just nothing.
My number one letdown was spending all my care tokens trying to kind of interrogate Billy to get some clear memories, and then having them not be matched, and having that happen more than once. Yeah. Like I don't mind like managing the stress, planning out my shift strategically, making choices about whether to provide medical care or like try to go for another care token or another memory, like all that stuff. Fine, but just that moment where you do all that work and you just get screwed by the deck just killed me.
And like that part right there, it's like, okay, so then they have this nice little action where it's like, yeah, like once you get one in that row, you can incur, you can keep going further. Yes, then I can just kind of burn through that row because I maybe only need that row, and it's just like, it's just like that's the thing. You're playing the game to like be very specific, and like, is that fun? Once you know the system, you're like, wait, so I only have to get this? That means I got to try to burn through all these cards, and then let's say like you're kind of like not you're mismanaged because you can have on-call little nurses, and then you can kind of stress your people out to fill these spaces. Well, meanwhile, he's having like a super emergency and like you could have a round where you have multiple emergencies, and it's just, you just think to yourself, like, I just want to get to the part where I can press him for more cards.
Like, yeah, and like, I was really working for the flavor text on this. The flavor text on the scenario cards was so good, and like the art is really good. I loved the partial memories and how they clarified, and the way that the story slowly reveals to you what parts of his life those are, who those people he's with are, what is happening, and there were so many things that were so thoughtful and so good. But I kind of felt like this should be a graphic novel or some kind of readerly experience, as opposed to I'm going to kind of grind away at this game for a little bit. Oh, bonus moment! It was like 2 seconds long, and now I have to do this for another like 30 to 45 minutes.
So I said, yeah, I was saying this. Go ahead.
Well, it kind of swings, right? So like you can have like just a straight up story, like a graphic novel adventures with like a veneer of a game. Or you could do the time stories thing where it's like a kind of involved thing. There's puzzles and there's memory element. There's a lot of other stuff going on. So I think that, this game kind of takes a middle route where it's like, trying to be a game, but it's trying to be a simple enough game that leaves room for the story to breathe. Yeah. So I get that. Yeah. I get that they want it to have a nice, simple, they don't want it, the mechanisms, because that happens in time stories. Like you can get the mechanism get in the way sometimes. Like all that dice rolling is like, oh, I can't do that. Right. Here, the mechanisms definitely don't get in the way of the story as mechanisms. It's just the luck aspects. I think it's just too simple to, like, is it possible for a game system to be too simple to deliver a story? I think that's kind of what's happening here.
And that's them. That's Hub Games though. Like they do this stuff where they let you create your story. They kind of let you fill in the blanks mentally. As a matter of fact, they give you like an easy set of mechanisms. They say, hey, like create what you want. And I love that about them. And there's not that in this one because they're trying to make you, be part of this story, like stay interested in the story. And when she said graphic novel, I was like, well, not necessarily, but like, I feel like there should be like maybe there should be like a little flip book or something that's a little bit more episodic or whatever. But I was like, yeah, maybe so. But yeah, it just, I don't know, for what they're reaching for, it is very ambitious. And I honestly can say it's executed well. It's just that I thought there'd be more to the actual gameplay elements than what we were chasing for during the game. Like, that's basically where I'm at with that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I really admire the ambition of this game. And, we talk all the time, thanks to Ignacy Chevicek, right? Like, oh, board games that tell stories. And we like that. And I'm always looking for interesting ways to combine narrative and game. And how can we do that? How can we make an emergent story? And I love that this game was made. I like that they went to the effort to tell this story in this way. I'm just not totally sure that it worked.
They're also going to be, I'm not going to I'll just say this. If they do this again, I will go down that road again with caution, but I will definitely, based on kind of, just kind of conversation, I can say that, like, if they do this again and what I think they're going to do, I would definitely still go on that ride because I think they'll respond really well to this, whether it's good or bad, and it's going to sell well, I'm pretty sure. So I hope that they do come back and go back to the woodshed and bring something back because this is, like I said, a good idea. The execution just didn't stick for me. I don't think it's a bad game. It just didn't stick.
Well, there's some families out there that might like this. Like, there's some families out there that might, if you're like, talking with a very young kid or, total non-gamers, they might actually open up for it because it doesn't have that, like, we're gamers, we love our stuff.
Kind of being like, it's not a bad review either. I guess we're not, it seems like we're giving it a bad review. It's just that, like, I think we were, you put a game on a pedestal and, right. Yeah, it's just that, where I was before I played it and now that I've played it is different, and that's kind of, was kind of disappointing for me. That's all.
I will say, though, having played all the way to the end, despite my frustrations with the gameplay elements, I'm still glad I went to the end because I did feel sad. Like, I felt something at the end, if that makes sense. And that's, not all games can do that. I mean, There's definitely something there. I just want a smoother delivery vehicle for story so that I can enjoy that more and more intensely.
Yeah, and it might be good for families. Like, we're gamers, we want our decisions, and some gamers just want to go there for the experience, and I think this game might be for them. So it's a conditional recommendation. I think at the end of the day, like what Jeremy was saying, it may sound like we're kind of griping on it, and I think we're griping on it because we, like I say it at the very beginning, we love Rory and we love Hub Games. We love what they're trying to do. I think we brought our expectations to the game, and I think gamers might bring the same expectations because we have a lot of gamers that listen to us. But if it's something that might be appealing to a family situation, then you might want to give that a look. So that is Holding On: The Troubled Life of Billy Kerr. Now we're going to step up in complexity. Now we're going to go into some gamers games. So this is 2 games. I've played one. Jeremy, I know, was looking forward to this. Liz, this might be something that you might want to perk your ears about because I kind of like this one. And then we're going to get to another one after this.
You said some things, Jason. I'm a little worried.
I did. I made some claims.
You said some things. You said some things, man.
Jeremy and I were talking about this one before. So this is Champions of Hara. Designed by Walter Barber, our friend Walter Barber. So another game that, from a very good friend of the podcast he's been on. I like the dude a lot. He works for them and he's the designer of the game. And this is published by Greenbrier. So this is a kind of big, like it's a decently big box. It's a scenario-based adventure game. It has some co-op, kind of an arena battle mode. It has a cooperative mode where it's like, you're playing a mission of some kind. It also has like genuine solo. Imagine all these games you talked about. I think this is one of the ones where there's like a genuine worked in one character for trying to do something solo. So that's a plus to this game already. Okay. So in Champions of Hara, you're going to be playing a champion, and the world is dying and the world is unstable. So these champions, they're quote unquote champions. Like I think in the lore, they're kind of like these downtrodden, off the beaten path type, weirdos that just like get sucked into this world that's just this unstable matrix of energy and all this kind of stuff. Monsters are roaming the land. There's rifts that are opening. So it's like a really kind of, it tells a story of this world that's unstable. And as a theme delivery system, how this game represents itself is like, so the world is this big hex map, like a really big hex map. Picture like a honeycomb. So like, it has like the 6 zones of, of hexes. And during certain parts of certain events that are going to happen, you actually get to change hexes. So all of a sudden there was a hex in the northeast corner and a hex in the southwest corner. Those are going to flip. Or, it's going to, the center tile is going to flip with some of the outer tiles. So like between zones, like you're actually going to change the geometry of the board, which I thought was a really cool kind of way to tell the story of this broken world. But that's the kind of setting of it. So what exactly are you doing? The actual combat, and this is where Jeremy's going to really come at me. The actual combat resembles Mage Knight.
Don't you dare. Okay, tread lightly. Here we go. Tread lightly. Here we
Ooh,
go.
drama.
Here we go.
Big claim.
Gotcha.
Considering Mage Knight is the number one solo, my number 2 game of all time. So here's I had Walt on the show to talk about the game. Yes, he is a big Mage Knight fan. That was not an accident. So it's a hand management game, right? So you're going to start off with 4 basic cards, and the cards, depending on where they are on the board, so they're like, the top half, bottom half. But unlike Mage Knight, where you have like, this half where you have to like cast a spell to cast the bottom half, so there's like that difference there. The difference here is that if you play a card to the table, it stays there, and you get to activate an effect. And then in a future turn, you can pick the card up, and when you pick the card up, you get to activate the other effect. So you're going to have this rhythm of the game where, you could have one turn where you play down 3 cards and you do things like you move, you attack, and you teleport, or whatever it is. And then you're on a different turn, you're going to play 1 card, pick 2 cards up, and then execute different actions. So that's what you're doing. You're really managing this thing. If you've played Mage Knight, that's what you're doing. You're looking at your hand going, what can I do? I can do this, this, and this. Or if I play the cards this way, I do this, this, and this. And you're puzzling. That's that's the whole, what Mage Knight is. It's you're looking at your hand, and it's just like, okay, I can do this, but if I do it this in order, or if I do it this way, I can do this plus 4. It's like, oh yes, okay, boom. And it takes you a little while to kind of think that through. And so that's the rhythm of the game. And
Jason,
you start with the start.
What do you say? What am I saying, Jason? What are you saying? That's what I'm saying. You're just saying.
I'm not finished.
I'm
not finished saying it.
Running away with it. You're comparing the gameplay, how the cards are managed. I don't know what you're actually saying.
So
let me finish saying it.
What I'm hearing is that I need to try this game.
Right.
Mm-hmm. If you like Mage Knight, yes.
Right. Okay.
So I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way you improve your deck in Mage Knight, there's a bunch of separate decks. Here it's much more streamlined. Like you're here for an hour. Like the game box says like 30 minutes per player. Like with the setup and with also the tracking and the admin and everything, take you a little bit more than 30 minutes on a solo. But you can really buzz through this thing pretty fast. Like you can. So the way that the game suggests to go through it is like you can kind of go through like 3 different scenarios for each different character. And every character has a solo scenario, and I think that Walt's going to fire up more. So you can really go through, like if you wanted to play 2 characters, you can go through a series of fights. You can get through that, all 3 scenarios in one night, so that's not a problem. So obviously Mage Knight has a lot. There's a lot of cards. There's a lot of, minions and all this kind of stuff. This one is much simpler. So like you have your starter 4 cards. You never get rid of them. What you do is when you're going to add onto these energy tracks, as you kind of go around the land, you're going to defeat monsters, you're going to close rifts, quote unquote, which is basically skill checks. So you can do those 2 things. You're getting energy, and then once you get certain amounts of energy, you're going to get improved cards. Those improved cards come out of your personal reserves. So you are going to know what you're going to get. You get choice of 2, you pick 1, and now you have a 5th. Let's say you have your opening 4. You now have a 5th card to put down, pick up, put down, pick up. You're going to improve your deck that way, and you're going to be able to do more and more cool stuff, and you're eventually going to have all your cards, and and then once you have your improved cards, you have that much more ability to complete the scenario goal. And believe me, these are hard. Some of these monsters are hard. They take a lot of, either they're very beefy or they take positioning. Like you have to be on this certain hex in order to hit him, or you have to get this fetch quest first, and then you can come in. And the scenarios are very, very elaborately worked. I mean, you could tell Walt put a lot of love into this game. It isn't just like the same old scenario 7 times.
Jason, what are you saying?
I'm saying check it out. I'm saying check it out. Okay.
I'm just giving it to you because you're kind of threatening me here with this Mage Knight thing. You're scaring me.
I'm saying that if you like Mage Knight and or Gloomhaven, if you like hand management, and you like in the cool art, like this is Steven Gibson art over here, so it's very like colorful pastel. Yeah. Walt put a lot of love into the world building, and I think the honeycomb moving hexes works as well. If you're into that, I would seriously give this a try. Can I give this an unqualified recommendation? Not quite. There's definitely some kind of warts to it. I think the biggest difficulty this game has is that it has a fair bit of admin between rounds. So there's a lot of event decks. So So you have decks that monsters come out, so you have to, do your monster deck. And then you have a separate deck, which is your quote-unquote dusk deck. The rounds go dawn, dusk, go, a separate deck for that one. And then you have the scenario has a separate roll, so you have to roll for that. And then the monster goes. So it's just a lot to track. And then you have to flip the tiles, which I get to a point where it's like, I don't feel like flipping the tiles, which is totally bad, but that's totally bad. That breaks the scenarios. Don't do that. But there's a lot of admin. And so, Mage Knight does that well because, people make fun of the monsters not moving, but that works in Mage Knight. It's just there. You don't have to remove yourself from the game to do this admin. So I think Champions of Hara kind of suffers from that a little bit. There is a lot of rolling. So my friend actually had problems with that because, you're rolling for these scenario effects and you're like, you don't want that much. If you're going to have like a strategic hand management game, it could have chilled out in a little bit. The other part is similar criticisms that I had to Tiny Epic Zombies. Because there's so many scenarios, there's a lot of rules ambiguity that arise from those scenarios. So certain characters will interact a certain way with the scenario, and it's like, I don't know how this works. I'm gonna, it'll say that the rulebook will say something like spawn scenario tokens randomly, but it doesn't define how to spawn scenario tokens randomly. I kind of figured out, you roll dice. That I figured that out. Or I looked it up on the rules. It wasn't there. There's a bunch of them, like little rules exceptions that can break, not break, but like it can hinder your ability to love a scenario. So, some accessibility issues. Like, I think Greenbrier has an issue with making their games as smoothly accessible as possible. I think Grimslavers had the same issues of a good game, but has some rough patches that make it less accessible than it can be. But if you like hand management, if you want it done in an hour and you want a cool alternative, what am I saying, Jeremy?
What are you
Check
saying?
it out. Champions of Hara. Go ahead and take a look. So Liz, are you a Mage Knight person?
I am a Mage Knight person. So
do you want to play Mage Knight in like an hour?
I want to play Mage Knight all the hours, yes.
Right.
That is a good answer.
I want to play Mage Knight at all hours. You got to be kidding me.
It does a lot different. It's a lot.
I'm serious. It's
yeah.
so hard to dethrone that game. That game has so many of the things I just want in a game.
This game does not dethrone Mage Knight. It is not. Mage Knight's still number 2. Mage Knight's still a better game than this one. But this game is shorter and it has probably a little bit more story.
Yeah.
And it has just as satisfying the moments of figuring out the puzzle and, unleashing the 10 attack barrage that brings down the enemy, and you've brain burn there for about 20 minutes. And, I've talked about the solo mode. The co-op mode is basically multiple solos. There's not a lot of cooperation between the two characters, so I kind of consider it multiplayer solitaire, which is fine. People are kind of tactically coordinating. The arena, I'm not a big competitive person, so I'm not going to discuss that. I'm talking about the adventure part. It works. Go check it out. That is Champions of Hara. So lastly, I've gone on about that game enough. Now I'm going to give Jeremy a little bit of a chance to gush about his own game or game that he wants to kind of talk about. Liz, I believe that you are on this train too. This one is Archmage. Yep, there you go. We're going to finish off with this one. This is Archmage. Archmage is designed by Tim Hirama. I think Hirama is the proper pronunciation.
Yeah, Hirama.
Tim Hirama, who is, by the way, a Board Gamers Anonymous Patreon member. Thank you very much for doing that. That helps out Every Night is Game Night as well. If you want to go check us out, go check out the Board Gamers Anonymous Patreon. You will be able to interact with the designer. And this one is published by Starling Games, a.k.a. Game Salute. So hit us up, man. What are we looking at when we're looking at Archmage?
All right, so Archmage is basically a medium weight area control resource management game where you are wizards basically trying to gain dominance over this land. Now there's like a competition of basically getting around this map and trying to gather the amount of resources and gather followers so that you can start to build this following, this big, massive following, to start to cast all these spells, place your mage tower, and then start initiating all these people and kind of promoting them and letting out and unleashing these spells. The game has 18 spells for you to unlock, and I'll kind of get to how you do that. What you're doing is basically there's the board is set up with a whole bunch of tiles face down, and those tiles are called wilderness tiles. There are 6 types of them, and they're all different colors. They kind of represent a spectrum of colors. So like green, purple, orange, black, and whatever, red. They all have a different name to them, and that's important.
Come on now, crypts, wilderness.
Yeah.
There's theme.
So what you have is basically on your turn, you get 5 movement points, and you're trying to like move and uncover tiles, and they call that exploring. And as you explore, you will kind of gain resources as you go along. So in the middle, dead smack in the middle of the board, is basically there's these 6 creatures. And on the outside corners, which you have to unveil, are these hybrid creatures. And what they represent is what's on your board. So if you stop on wilderness tiles, you gather resources. If you stop on camps, you gather followers. If you stop in the town, you gather resources and followers. But once you stop in one of these races, you can start to initiate your followers. And you get a whole bunch. I think there's 25, but you only start with 15. And what you're doing is you're putting them on this board that's kind of like a overlapping Venn diagrams. And they're for each color, and they have like a big spot. And as you know, the overlaps come, the colors start to blend as you go up. And what you're doing is putting your followers, or you're putting your followers on there, and you're trying to over time promote them. You have to put down this big mage tower to kind of establish your dominance for that area. There's another way to do that too. But once you go down there, you start to make spells, basically. And when you make those spells, you have to keep those workers on here. And the crux of the game is how you manage those workers to get up those tiers, to keep promoting them. You have to sacrifice your workers as you go up. Now, the trick to that is, and why this game really gets really, really smart, is because as you sacrifice those people, you may not have enough workers as you go up these tiers. There's 3 tiers. And you lose the spells below it as you go up if you don't manage your workers correctly. So you need to have a lot of different workers at different places, and you also have to get certain types of spells that kind of adhere to the game. So they have ones like Quicken that lets you go extra goes. You have Gate that helps you get across the field faster. There's a whole bunch of spells. There's 18 of them. Not all of them are insanely great, but I think they matter from game to game. Even getting to the top of the most advanced skills is difficult anyway. So it's really just gathering those for in-game points. The game also has a really smart little mechanic on the outside. When you the rounds are counted by having these little circle, what are they? Little circle
planets.
Things. They're planets.
Like circle planets.
The planets have to align.
Stop it.
When the moon
and what happens
is in the 7th house.
And depending on player count, you kind of like take them one by one and kind of move them in to basically gain a resource, but also it helps count the rounds. And that's kind of how you count the game down to the end. But yeah, it's got a lot of little smart mechanisms, but that Venn diagram, it's almost like you almost have to see it in action to believe it. But this board is really the major selling point. Some of the things that I think people will have issues with is, one, the setup. Although I talked to Tim when I first met him, he was like, oh, this is an easy setup. I'm like, you know what? Putting a whole bunch of tiles down is a thing, okay? Putting them face down, making sure everybody's washing them up correctly, that's a thing. Also, some people don't like the fact that sometimes some games get more like, hey, this is my side, this is your side. We'll leave each other alone and play the game. That kind of happens in a 2-player game. Mm-hmm. And then I forgot to talk about the solo mode. So the solo mode is a little bit different. It's actually a really viable solo mode. So what happens is an overlord die, and you roll it, and you go in a certain direction. And basically what it's doing is traveling around, knocking out your guys, and fortifying every area where it can. And I guess I kind of glossed that over, but as you go around these tiles, you're also placing your followers to stop other people and create ward spells to stop other people. And that's what he does, except he does it like on steroids, and he's basically trying to dominate the map so you can't gather your resources. Very interesting. I would not purchase it just for the solo mode, but I was actually kind of surprised because when I met Tim, I was like, that's actually not bad. And he said, yeah, I think it is a good balanced solo mode, and it is. I played it several times, and I like it. game definitely works it feels better at 3 and 4 players. So I would say 1, 3, and 4 players. 2 just seems so hands off because you can get away with that because there's it does shorten the board a little bit, but it's still, I feel like maybe you can still kind of go hands off, and that's generally what people do in Euro games when they can, is kind of stay hands off and do what they can, So
I think that to emphasize that point, this is a Euro.
Yeah.
I think looking at the board, you might think like fantasy adventure because there's mage towers and there's spells and there's exploration, all that kind of stuff. This is not a fantasy adventure. Or people will look at the interactions. They'll think, okay, this is kind of an area majority. I have more area, you have more area, and they're scoring based on the tiles, but that's not where you're going to get your points. This is a Euro where you manage your spells. This is what the game is. I'll get to that in a second, but just want to make sure that people know this is a Euro.
Yeah. And you're also going to do more disruption than you are going to go like, I'm going to go boil this dude, I'm going to go bowl this dude over. You're kind of like, all right, I need to get him out of this little corner area. So I'll kind of pick away at his, areas over here. I'll pick off a couple of his guys. So that way they go away to the supply. He can't get to them. That kind of thing. Or once you put down your mage tower, that kind of signifies like, this is where I'm going to promote people and recruit, this is where I'm going to promote people for the whole game. So it kind of makes you stay where you are a lot. Like, I got to come back to this area a lot.
Yeah.
So there's that. And that's why I could see your multiplayer focus may not get you to certain levels on certain spells because you're kind of like, I just want to get the quick spell. I just want to get this, and that'll get me through the game. So,
although I do need to point out, especially when you're not playing solo, you have to get to those master level spells in order to score.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the game is ultimately decided not by how sweet your spell slinging is, although it is very fun, but how many points you get. And, controlling territory, like if you have the majority of the groves, the majority of the mines, that's 2 points. 1 if you tie, I think. And then, but a master level spell is 4 points.
Yep.
So if you are really, really getting those spell cards and accumulating them, that is probably the real heart of the game. So even if having a lot of weak spells seems fun, you must focus on getting those higher level ones. Yeah. And so actually I totally agree with you, Jeremy, that I would not buy this game just for solo. I think it's a solid solo mode. It's respectable. It's like totally decent. I have enjoyed it, but I wouldn't buy the game just for that. However,
it's not tacked on. That's what we'll say. It's not tacked on like some of these other games.
It is a solid AI. I really, however, love playing this game with 3 and 4. So I actually brought it to the game club that I co-sponsored at my high school and taught it to some of the kids. And they just loved it. They just loved it. It was awesome to play with them because, we're getting real mean about territory and like really trying to abuse those spells to abuse each other. It was quite pleasing. But we finished playing. And, I went and did some errands and stuff, went to my classroom, got stuff. And I came out of the parking lot, and the kids were out there waiting for their parents to pick them up. They were still talking about this game and, like, how they could play it better and, like, which spells are the best spells. And to me, a game that does that, especially to teenagers, is doing something really right.
Yeah. This game has some potential. It needs expansions. I would look forward to the expansions, and they are coming back for it. And I can't wait.
Yep, there is a expansion already lined up. It is designed, is ready to get Kickstarted in a couple of months. So every character has the same spells. So, every character has the same deck of 18 spells. Not a problem, though, because there's different ways to explore it. And because of that very kind of tight design space, it does not have the problem that I talked about with some of these other games where there's so many options that you start to, like, you get into wonky rules and to different, exceptions and stuff. Where you have the smaller space, it's all smooth because it's just been tested and polished and polished. Right. Every spell is good. Every single, like, especially cause I played solo only. I don't have friends. But
just move to Atlanta, you'll have one.
There you go. So I did not play in the solo mode. You don't have the master level spells. You just get like a bunch of the lower level spells. So I got a chance to practice with a lot of them. Not one lemon. Like there will be times where, so like as Jeremy was saying, you get 5 actions, but you get as many spells as you can cast, and you have to spend resources to cast your spells, but you can just cast them once a turn, and there'll be turns where I cast every spell. And that's not something that you could say in a lot of games. Like there's going to be lemons, there's going to be great cards. No, the balance in these cards is really, really good. So like in the beginning, the moving 2 seems powerful and this other one doesn't, but you play more. And it's like, oh, I see the power of this spell now. Subjugate, I can, I don't have to lose my followers when they die. They could just come back to me, blah, blah. It's so like, I was really into that, and I could see this being like really fun with the multiplayer and stuff. Here's my only thing, and this is the same criticism or similar criticism that Jamie Keegi had on his review. And I talked about this with Tim in the Slack, and he kind of agrees, but kind of he wanted me to make the point that this is a Euro. The fact that the board has this presentation of adventure, I feel like, and that's what it is. Like you see the art style, there's monsters, there's all sorts of stuff going on here, spells. It puts you in a headspace of fantasy adventure. Yet it's gonna do some wonky things that only a Euro game can get away with. So, the biggest one I had, like I figured out after my 5th loss, that it wasn't an adventure game, it was a spell Euro game. Yep. One of the things I was doing wrong is that they have the action called the Mage Tower action. And I was like, okay, you go to the Mage Tower, you train a wizard. And so it's like, okay, you train a wizard, they go like kind of in, closer to the center of the circle and they get trained. I thought because I was in the headspace of training a wizard, that I was like, you go and you train one wizard. That is not what happens. Yeah. When you go to the Wizard Tower, it is a battle royale brouhaha of 9 wizards on the however many wizards you got on the outer level, and you just like train and train, and it's like it's basically like a bracket.
I made that mistake the first 2 playthroughs. Then I had to look at it again. Thankfully, he did a great job on that tutorial that he has. He has a tutorial online, so if you buy this game, definitely check out the tutorial. It does a really, really good job of walking through every phase. And for some reason, I just missed that. And then it unlocked to another level. And I was like, whoa.
So that's my point. Yeah. Jeremy, this is my point. It is not for no reason that you did that. You were in the headspace of you go to a wizard tower. What happens in a wizard tower? You graduate 1 wizard because that's what happens in like a normal setting. So because we was in a headspace, you make that rules mistake. And it's clear. It's in the rules book. It's actually in the rules book has a diagram of multiple wizards kind of doing stuff. So that's one rule, but it's emblematic of the kind of mistakes that you can make because of the packaging of the game. Because, like this game gives out expectations and they might not be met by you. Like if you're expecting a Euro, you might be really, really happy with this game. But if you're expecting something else because of the presentation of the game, it might be a little bit frustrating. And you might run into a rules thing that you assume is good and it's in the rules. Like it's not like it's not there because I think the rules are really good. But because you're assuming stuff, because that's what you don't want to just have to like read every jot and tittle of the rule book in order to play. You're going to make some mistakes because of the headspace thing. That's not a game criticism though. This game is what it is.
Although that's...
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say there is one of the things deceiving about it in a good way though, which is that when I first opened it, I was like, oh god, this is like a lot heavier than I thought. It looks really complicated. And then you actually start playing it super streamlined. Everything makes sense. Once you enter the headspace of the game, it's fine. I really actually thought it was a smooth experience. It was easy to teach. It ended up being a really positive experience.
I was just thinking, like, how we just kind of talked about the Steam being kind of a miss. I have a thing with Euros that this happens all the time because it's like the reason why Euros sort of work sometimes is because they really are based on things. It's like, look at the history of this dude. Let's play that game. This is a trading game. Whereas, like, this game does actually go for a theme. And when I talk about theme, I always think of, like, when you read text in the beginning of a game, do you read it or not? Which is going to determine whether you care or not. Or are you going to read about these races and the mythic races so you find out the lore before you play the game? Well, if you don't, especially for a game like this that's trying to step away and try to sell you a theme about mages and exploring the lands, you probably won't care. And then you can kind of boil it down to just being a storyless Euro. And I want to at least push back on that a little bit. I was like, at least they did give an effort to making the gameplay look like, a mage game.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, honestly, if you're going to explore, you want to explore and turn over and read a card after you turn over one explore token every time. I don't know. Like, what do you think?
I dig a thematic Euro, actually.
Yeah.
And although I do have one thematic question. Okay, this is maybe a stupid question. So the premise of the game is that you learn spells by taking relics to these races who then will teach you their magic in exchange for the relics. But then you need more relics to power your spells. Why would they teach you spells that will make you destroy the relics that they value so much?
Yeah.
Exactly. When you really think about it,
like, wait, why would the elves help me? This is not self-interest at all. It's like, I'm going to give you 2 relics, and then I'm going to go find like 8 more of your relics and just burn them for my own interest.
Yeah, also, the hyper races seem kind of like a better deal to me. I don't know. Like, I was like, okay, do I spend my time in the middle, or do I just kind of sit around here on the outside? I can get different sides of my board going, and I just, that plus the gate spell, I can go fly over there after I do that.
Oh yeah, gate's my favorite.
Yeah, gate is the bomb.
So it's a very we're all on the same page. I think it's a very, very fun game. It's a very well designed game. I'll say that right now. Solid Euro. My biggest barrier with it was the expectation that was created by the presentation. And I think that's not just a theme thing. I think that it created some rules and expectation issues that got in the way of my enjoyment of the game, and it might get in the way of somebody who is just approaching the game. So like you want a game that has good access, and I don't know if this game has the best access because of the disjunction between theme and mechanism. But, like Chris was saying, we want these Euros to experiment with good theme. We want, something that's like that has some real heft to it. But when you do get into it, it's not very complicated. The spells are fun. They're all well designed. So I think at the end of the day, Jeremy, I think you say either this was the surprise of the year or like this was like a legit contender for game of the year for you.
No, I was going to say this is probably a big surprise for me because I did not see this one coming. And, to be honest with you, I didn't care. I had a bad relationship with Game Salute at the beginning of the year. And I think a lot of people took flack with them last year. I was actually going to end this with this part and just say, like, they did such a great job starting with the Black Orchestra 2nd edition campaign, now Everdale, and then now this, all basically in the same year. Such a comeback kid story for this year. And now I'm like really on their boat. And Brenna Nuna, she's kind of like their marketing person, and she actually like designs and develops stuff too. She's been really out there in the community addressing and listening to people, and like I'm just like I'm really big into this company right now, and this game is actually the one that's not talked about as much, and I feel like it should be.
So you did you play? Oh, you were looking at Everdell, right, Liz?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a chance to play Everdell. We reviewed it on our previous episode. I loved Everdell. I'm going to keep that one. This one I really liked. Not as much because of the issues, but it's still a really good game. Black Orchestra, solid production. I'm a big fan of Planetarium, so I think it's one of those things where it's like when something goes wrong, it's printed on page 1, but then when something goes well, it's printed on page 36.
Yeah.
The bad thing is out there and it just persists, like pee in the pool. And it's like, come on, can we? I'm sorry, Liz. you can't just scoop out the pee in the pool, apparently.
Go ahead.
But
Go ahead.
In this particular case, I really feel like what Game Salute did was successfully drain the pool and fill it up with some beautiful new water. It is jump right in, guys. Like, I know we get very negative in board gaming. And it's like, and it's almost like cool to be negative because like, oh, it's a Game Salute game. It comes almost like this hipster thing to say. It's like, oh, I know a thing about board games. I know Game Salute sucks, and that's only board gamers know that. So it becomes this kind of like, it's a negative, but it becomes something that board gamers like to say. Okay, let's let go of that because what happens is that might be cool, but we miss out on when companies really try to turn it around. And I had Brenna on the show, and I asked her point blank, why not just start over? And she's like, well, we have all these great titles. Our mistake was we haven't serviced these titles. Now they're servicing the titles. Now we're they have Alien Frontiers. Alien Frontiers is a fantastic game. Black Orchestra they got, which is an older game that they revamped.
Hey, gimme guinea pigs. Gimme guinea pigs. I love that kid's game. It's under it's under one of the little umbrella companies. So yeah.
So I just want to put it out there right now. We're gonna I know it's at the end of a very long episode, and I'm gonna have to edit this down because it's very long. But we want to put it out there that give these companies, if a company really puts as much into it as GameSloot is doing, give them a chance. There's so much good stuff. I really, really loved Everdell. And some of the other games are good too. Don't just let the negativity be out there. Don't just rely on the standard wisdom. Give a game company a chance if it really feels like to you that they're really doing stuff. And that is exactly what GameSloot's doing.
Awesome.
All right. So that is our entire episode. I know, Liz, you haven't had a chance to really breathe in some of this new stuff. Actually, you know what? I'm not moving to Atlanta. You move up to Connecticut, and we're going to get together that way. Anyway, so that was 4 games, very anticipated games, fun games, interesting games, all 4 of them. Liz and Jeremy, thank you guys so much for joining us. Go ahead and hit us up with those links again. Where can we find you guys?
You can find me at www.beyondsolitaire.net.
You can find me on www.JamaliPlaysGames.com or Board Game Revolution for Board Game Revolution Live on Fridays.
All right. So you can find us at ENGN_podcast on the Twitter, on Every Night's Game Night Facebook group. We have a geek list that is popping. I have every single episode, over 100 episodes. We're reaching 110 at this point, and all the preview series as well. Please go rate and review on iTunes. That really helps us bump up those algorithms and get even more exposure. That was a ton of Kickstarters, and we have more game content coming for you next week. But until then, as Anthony would say, let's grab a game off of that shelf and let's make every night a game night.